You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey, Jeebles. We haven't used that phrase in a long time, so there's a little nostalgia for you. Jeep peeps, guys, girls, and others. Whatever you wish to call yourself, whatever you identify as. Whether you identify as a Willys, a YJ, a TJ, a CJ, a Rubicon.
A Sport.
You know, or just a plain old Wrangler. Welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, you know, the engineer, the guy that reads instructions, uses tools mostly correctly, unless I'm getting really creative. There's a little of that today. But and otherwise, you know, generally try to keep the Jeeps running as normal and reasonable as possible.
And I am Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy, embroiled in massive amounts of chaos. And with that, as I always say, remember, we will always share what worked for us and what didn't. So it's really up to you to do your research, choose what you want to do to your Jeep with that research, and read the instructions.
Please read it and follow the instructions.
It was clunky, but I got through it.
As we say, all the manufacturers do spend a little bit of time. At least they paid a couple rice bowls to the guy doing the Chinese translations.
Yes.
You know, insert tab A into oval hole B type. No, whatever.
That was a bit like Eastern Bloc there, but
yeah, it was. I'm sorry to those guys. Most of the guys that are selling quality Jeep parts actually use spec writers to do their stuff, and they're really pretty good.
Yeah, well, some use comedy writers out of work.
Yeah.
Side splitters.
That could be too. So, you wanted a moment.
Yes, I wanted a quick moment just to get...
Moment's over. No.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, say thank you for all the outpouring of support. It really means a lot to us. But this show is the therapy, which helps get me through the day, which is awesome. And also, too, I guess we can go ahead and go right into this.
Sure.
Crawling for the Fallen happening up. The open registration probably closed by the time November 1st. But the event on November 12th, 13th, and 14th, night rides and stuff like that. Check out the link we'll have in the show notes for more.
Yep.
We're going to be there.
We're going to be there. We're finally... I shouldn't say it because it just will jinx it and something will happen again.
Yeah.
But no, we're going to do our best to be there. You can find us at the Gulf Coast Drive Shaft booth for most of the show if we're not out on the road and the trails or running around with Chrissy trying to, keep things suitably insane for everybody and enjoyable. But we're going to go up with Shane and I don't know if the 90 YJ Project Jeep will be there or not. It's running, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But whether he gets it registered in time to get it up there and licensed, well, we'll see.
Yeah,
we will see. But we're gonna go up and join him, and Mel, and the rest of the crew up there. And if you have questions about drive shafts, the roundy bits, flexi roundy bits, and non-flexi roundy bits, and all
broken
the different
roundy
stuff,
bits,
and yeah, big time broken. We'll be up there, spending some time in that booth and wandering around. If you're in the Central Florida or even the North Central Florida arena, come on down. Crawling for the Fallen. It's a great event.
Yep, it's at the firm this year.
You'll probably recognize the voices on the night ride. We are recording the names of the fallen officers. I wish I could tell you that it was shorter this year.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's been a rough year for everybody.
Yeah.
So, but we will be doing the voiceover read on that. And you can at least go, oh, I know those voices. What else you got?
A brain cramp. Dorman released the metal housing upgrade for the 3.6 Pentastar motor from the plastic one.
And he's talking about the oil housing that is notorious. Although, there's a couple of questions that the engineer has.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, like, because some people are quick to doom the actual housing itself, and there's an asterisk. Some people say it's the O-ring. But go ahead, Kevin, what's your questions? Let's see if the parts guy can answer it. Hold on. It's still on back order. Next one.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see Dorman taking a forward lead, stepping out of just reproducing and making a step forward. There's two big issues. One is, yes, most of the reported failures revolve around leaking O-rings, okay? There have been a few broken plastic parts. Typically, though, it's broken more from overzealous tightening of the oil cap assembly on the cartridge.
Because it has a thread stop.
Yes.
And once you get that stop, you stop. The O-ring does the sealing, and people just go, well, let me get the breaker bar and
make
go
it
one more
tighter.
crank,
And they snap it off. But, okay, I don't know Dorman's technology. Maybe the aluminum O-ring land is deeper. Maybe it uses a larger or better sealing shaped O-ring assembly, because, folks, there are a zillion different compounds to make different O-rings. Yep. And there's a certain amount of compression, and then the groove that the O-ring sits in has pressure on one side of the groove, not on the other side of the groove. And if it's not shaped correctly, oil can actually go around the O-ring and leak out. So a lot of this is let's wait and see. I hate to say that. I'd love to get my hands on one and find a suitable guinea pig gladiator, excuse me, locally that we could do some testing on. And
nice.
But we will look at that. And then the engineer in me also sees another potential, two of them, in fact. One, people decry plastic for the housing, but plastic is used in a lot of vehicles, and it has advantages that people don't realize. It's a thermal insulator.
Right.
That oil gallery and the filter are full of high temperature engine oil.
Yeah.
Okay. The plastic slows the radiation of that back into the engine compartment. An aluminum housing is not going to slow it down at all. It's, in fact, going to probably raise the upper area of the engine's temperature significantly. I'm sure Dorman has done some testing, but I doubt their testing is real-world testing like we see people abuse Jeeps like crazy.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between a lab. And, again, I'm hoping and I'm pretty sure they did some form of,
they had
actual
to do.
on vehicle.
They had to. Well,
but
I say that. But
that's a giant heat sink.
Yeah, so... is that going to cause collateral? Are we going to have issues like on the TJs, folks? If you've ever pulled a wiring harness on a TJ, the harness that goes to the injectors and the coils, and tried to take it apart, most of them are fused and melted into one polychromatic candy cane of wires. And they're welded. They're not coming back apart. And that's due to that radiant heat on the top of the engine. The other thing of concern to me is plastic is flexible. Now, you can say nasty things about it being flexible, but you've got an oil filter up there on the end of a lollipop stick of passageways full of hot oil, and you're bouncing it down the trails. And the plastic can let that filter mass kind of bobble a little bit. It's not, you may not even see it, but I guarantee if you put a micrometer gauge on the thing, a dial indicator, you'd see several thousandths, maybe even more than several, of movement. Aluminum is much more rigid, and everybody, well, that's good. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not, because aluminum fatigues and cracks. So are we going to see the top of that whole housing crack off? Again, I expect Dorman did what they could, but a lot of this is real world testing. So we will see those of you, it may be that that's a great housing replacement for, people who are trail riders, but not for rock bouncers, or maybe fine for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's still there's what did you say earlier when we were talking about this? There's, it's basically there's for every yin there's a yang.
Oh for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction.
So you rarely get away with simply improving something with one step. So, but still, hats off to Dorman for making that leap and investment. And folks, say what you will about Dorman, and they are part of a large corporation, and they do make their money making things for us to fix our Jeeps with. And they do mostly a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I've been dealing with them, like the Dorman and Motormite companies. They make all kinds of really cool fasteners, because being in the automotive industry, a lot of times those door panels, they don't have the little snap clips separately. You got to buy the whole door panel. I know it sounds crazy, but that's just how it's sold.
Oh no, I got it. I've had to buy that myself.
Yeah, and Motormite and Dorman, they've had those little clips you can buy. Are they perfect? No, but when you hit it with hard enough with a rubber mallet, it'll stay. Yes,
it'll stay in there. And when you're sitting there and 3 of your door clips are broken off and you can't keep the panel on, and it's kind of going as you go down the wood.
Or you open the door and the door panel's still there, and you hold the door in your hand, you went, oh, well.
Yeah.
I got a secondary door. Hold on. Let me get that for you.
It's really nice when you can go to there and you can look up your make, model, year, and trim level, and they'll send you the blister pack with exactly the pieces that should fit.
Yeah.
So
again, with a proper leverage of application of force.
Proper application of leverage and force is usually the right way to say that. But okay.
Words. So getting on to the meat of the subject of the. Do you have anything else you want to cover?
No, I'm fine. Let's
getting on to the meat of the subject. I was perusing a local Jeep group recently, and someone was stranded on the side of the road.
Is that the same as what do they call it? Stalking or
lurking?
Lurking. Oh, that's it. So you were doing undercover research. Does that sound better? Dun, dun, dun,
I am such a 9-year-old when it comes to jokes like that. Dutch oven. Okay, moving on. So I am terrible. Google Dutch oven. Oh wait, sorry, I've been listening to a lot of Micro. But anyways, no, the
I don't even know what he's talking about.
Micro, the way I heard it with Micro.
Oh, Mike. Oh, I thought you were spelling micro, M-I-R-C-O, like microwave.
Well, sometimes he does get into macro into subjects, but
okay.
No.
Micro, yes. Dirty jobs, blue collar work, force, and all the, yes, got it.
But anywho, I forgot my train of thought now. Toot, toot. No, anyways, I was on the lurking. I was lurking on the Facebook pages, and one of the person brought up how they were ran out of gas and they're on the side of the road, and no more than 5 Jeeps passed. And no one wanted to stop, and the Jeepers code and all this kind of stuff. And we've all seen those where the guy puts the meme on there that says, this post didn't go the way you wanted it to, because everyone was saying, well, you should have looked at your own gas gauge. There's self-reliability. There's self-reliance.
Self-accountability.
That's the word I was looking for. Yes. Accounting. But, and I'm like, wow, but it got me thinking, because, Dory luckily had never been in that situation, but I would never hold it against somebody, because this is the day and the age we live where people would use a woman as a decoy to, have you pull over and bad things happen. I mean, have I stopped for other Jeepers? Yes, when a bunch of other people have stopped too, when there's safety in numbers. But, again, that's a tough call for me, because if I'm by myself, I would call a friend, cell phone, whatever the case may be. I don't know how to feel about that subject, because yes, helping people, that's what Jeepers do. Absolutely. But at the same time too, it's scary out there. Scary to put yourself at risk in a situation that you don't know. Yeah. Now, ultimately she did get help. Okay. And it generated some pretty vehement, Facebook posts pro and against, the stopping. And, I think somebody about halfway through the chats, another lady put it very succinctly. She said, I would have stopped, but I had to think of my family and kids. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing. It wasn't that some people didn't stop because they just didn't care. They didn't stop because it was on a busy highway. It was in a situation where they felt there was too much risk to themselves. Yeah. What you can do, folks, is you can always call, for them. You could pull over and without rolling down your window, say, hey, do you have a phone? Do you need me to call someone? But again, you have to do what's safe and right for you. And I felt very bad for the lady but Jeepers helping Jeepers is a great thing. Mm-hmm. Running out of gas is not necessarily the kind of thing. To me, Jeeper helping Jeeper, if I see a Jeep on its side, if I see it stuck in a mud hole, that's really where I saw it coming from. If there'd been an accident, yes, I'll pull over and help. Yeah. But I do that for anybody, not just a Jeeper. You run out of gas. Ooh, that's a tough one. Now, do you know that they ran out of gas? All you know is they're sitting on the side of the road. Yeah. Some things are easy to see, like a flat tire, like a shredded tire.
Right.
I have stopped for those situations.
I have too, but even then, we're both males, and in a situation that, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying society doesn't put us in the same risk category of another woman Jeeper stopping. And that was one of the things that, does she want to, somebody want to put themselves at risk? And I'm sure I'll be criticized for even bringing gender into it, but it's a fact of life. It's a reality. Folks. It's a reality. Yeah. And do I stop for everybody? No. Do I wave for everybody? No.
Yeah, that's another thing I had to touch on real quickly.
Yep.
US 19. It is a 4-lane highway on each side. It is a dangerous road. And people go, I was on 19. No, and the person didn't wave. Yeah, I saw you, bud, but I had both hands on the wheel, making sure no one else ran into me, backed into me, pulled into my lane, sudden stop.
Absolutely.
I'm paying
You've
attention.
had that happen at least 3 times.
Yeah, I am paying attention to the road around me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not looking at 4 lanes over to the left. Now, a 2-lane highway, that's a different story.
Yeah.
You know,
But I get it. I think it would have been nice of people to stop. Yes. But expecting people to stop, I think that's a little egotistical.
Yeah,
But that's just me.
well, just now, again, everyone kept bringing up the Jeepers code and what.
There is no code,
Yeah,
folks.
I like.
None of us, I don't know about you, but I didn't sign any code. What I had was I met people, we talked, and I got to know people. And yes, people who appear to be in distress. Well, again, you either are the kind of person that stops and helps somebody with a flat tire, regardless of vehicle or not, you know. We had another one here in the local area to me, and I'm not going to go in depth on it because it was on Facebook for about an hour and a half, and then it was taken down for obvious reasons. But an individual in one of the neighborhoods around here decided to do a little freelance wheeling, and went down on a divided 4-lane, not a highway, but a local road. And it has a bridged area. Now, there is a very small creek that the bridge goes over, but the bridge is more of a super highway grade bridge because this area is highly developed, and the design of the road was such that they wanted it elevated. Now, it's one of those weird ones that when you're on the road, you don't really see this as a bridge. It just looks like the road keeps going. Oh, there's a sidewalk with a railing in this section. On one side, it kind of looks like, all right, yeah, there's a little bit of a valley there. On the other side, you don't see anything.
Yeah.
But there's a small creek, and it's probably 25 feet down. All right. Well, they got off the road on the 1 lane on that side where it was open and went down, and it's not legal to go there. Okay. Now, the people will tell you, well, it's not posted. Well, no, but it's private land. It's owned by the local area development, even if it's county land. If you've got to drive over a curb and then down a maintained drainage path, one of the little concrete V's that goes down, pretty good shot that that's not a public access way.
Yeah.
You remember our motto, folks,
Yeah.
Tread lightly, wheel legal. But anyway, the individual got down and was going to turn under the bridge. And you could tell a lot of people do that. Mm-hmm. There were tracks from 4-wheelers. There were tracks from Jeeps. There were obvious tracks from, trucks and other things under there. And it's all sugar sand here in the Sunshine State. We really don't have much in the way of rocks unless they're imported or in people's heads. And the problem is the creek in sands usually don't have that real soft, gentle slope in,
Yeah.
It's not a V. It's a frickin' notch in the ground.
Yeah.
And it had vertical sand banks, probably 3.5, 4 foot straight down.
Right.
And I guess he was actually, to be honest, I don't know if it was he or she, but whoever it was posted, well, my phone fell out. The sunroof was open, it was a Freedom top, fell in the creek. Well, why did it fall in the creek? Maybe it was in the console. Maybe it was in their hand. I'm guessing the hand because they turned a little late. And when they turned, they broadsided the edge of the creek. The sand gave way, and this JKU turned turtle right in the creek.
Ouch.
Now, the creek isn't that big, so the whole Jeep didn't fit. Just the driver's upper roof corner window and about half the roof. And the creek was like, well, got to get to the lower side, and the windows were down, so it just flows right through the Jeep and out the other end. And, of course, can anybody come help? Can anybody bring winch cables? We need like 2 or 3 30-foot cables.
Yeah.
Clue number 1, this is not a good situation. They came nose abrupt to one of the column supports about less than 3 feet away, which means that you could not winch them forward because there's a big, column
in the way,
18-inch concrete column right in front of them. it was going to have to be rolled back on its wheels, but of course now it's sitting on a 4-foot bank, so you're not going to get it entirely on its wheels. You can kind of get it half up, half down,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have to winch from the back, but that's an uphill winch, and it's soft sugar sand, so you're going to have to go up the hill, strap off to a tree. Long story short, I know people tried, and then enough people tried and stood there watching that they got the attention of the local police, who I guess when my wife and I went by the next day, the police were down there looking like, okay, is there an accident and injuries? And then it wasn't. And then we came back an hour later, and there was the rotator heavy lift recovery, because that's really the only way that Jeep was coming out of there.
Yeah.
And what surprised me was before the poster took it off, there was all kinds of, oh, you just need to roll over, start it, and drive it out. And I'm sitting there going, okay, a Jeep's been upside down. Even if the engine isn't submerged, it's been upside down for several hours.
Mm-hmm.
There is no oil left in that engine.
Yeah.
There is no thing left in the transmission that I would trust to run. You know, probability that the gear lube in the axles has run down to one end or one other or out the vent tube, because they're not really designed to be stood on their side for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I hope the recovery, for whatever it costs the individual, I hope you listen to this and you realize that that was the right way to recover it, and then hopefully it was checked over and oil changes, fluid changes, you know, because nothing should have been started and cranked. I don't think the engine would have cranked anyway. I think the cylinders, oil would have been full of oil from weeping past the rings over hours of sitting upside down, and it was not hydro-locked, but oil-locked.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those, we talk about don't wheel alone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This person posted that they lost their keys, they lost their phone, they had to run home. So they're local to wherever this incident occurred to feed their kids and then come back and trying to recover. And I'm very sorry it happened, but you shouldn't wheel alone. If you were playing with your phone while you're wheeling, that's really not a good thing, folks. You have to, you know, we want you to pay attention when you're driving on the road, and when you're wheeling, you really need to be paying attention, particularly in unstable situations. And so as sorry as we are that it happened, hopefully it's all been, you know, the Jeep is back home or at least in service bay getting itself put back together.
Well, I actually just talked about that because I was going to cover a similar subject, you know, about the Jeeper code. To me, it's no person left behind on the trail.
Yeah.
Now, of course, sometimes a vehicle gets totally where you know, it's beyond the capabilities where you need the heavy, you know, twist wrecker, the whole 9 yards. So you bring that person home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So technically no person left behind, sometimes because
Doesn't
of
mean
damage.
Jeep is not left behind occasionally.
To me, that's the only Jeeper code that applies.
Yeah.
You know, because I got
Otherwise, Matt's Off-Road Recovery, the YouTube channel, would not have anything to recover.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Shout out to the guys who got the
Great guys. I just watched the Samurai Recovery, the last phase today, and it was like, oh, that's pretty awesome.
That's cool.
So
yeah, some of them are very fascinating. The other thing too with the Jeepers code that I think is very interesting, and it's funny because I got to talk about it because it is a very polarizing subject. Either people love them or hate them, and that's the Jeep ducks. Okay. Now, I'm going to add an asterisk to the Jeepers code.
yeah.
If you can make someone else's day better, you do it.
Yeah, if you can.
If you can, you know, even if it's just saying nice Jeep, giving them a thumbs up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this day because it is the best day of my life. Dory got ducked while we were at Daytona Beach.
Yeah, I remember that.
Got ducked. And she was so excited because she got her first duck and it made her day. And I remember how excited she was. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to spread that love some way, somehow.
Yep.
Obviously, everything going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Week and a half ago, before I left to go to North Carolina, I stopped off at the Walmart to get some provisions.
Oh.
I walk out there and I'm having a bad day. Not going to lie to you, I'm having a really bad day. And there's a duck on my handle. Yes. I broke down for a few minutes, but it made my day because I remembered the good time with Dory. So on that note, with the Jeepers code, again, if you can make someone's day, I think the Jeep ducks are cool. I'm probably going to get some, like, you know, well, that's not a real Jeep. You know what? Being a real Jeeper is making someone feel special to me.
Yeah, acknowledging the other Jeep, acknowledging the kinship that you have with somebody who shares a similar passion. Yeah, they may be a rock bouncer, you may be a trail rider or a mud bogger, but you both like the same vehicle. You both kind of can relate to when somebody says, I can't get the transfer case out of 4 low. Or something along those lines. So, no, that's awesome, Scott. That's really awesome. Did you see the latest take on it, though? I have to say was cute, but okay, more effort than I'm going to.
Is it the one where everyone leaves a My Little Pony on the Broncos?
No, but that would be different.
That would be funny.
No, this person got ducked with a pool inflatable duck on top of the roof of the
Was
Jeep.
it Kurt? Because he posted about that. Kurt is our roving correspondent. That was funny.
I mean, it was a 3-foot yellow duck sitting on the roof of a Jeep.
And he goes, I drove off, and funny enough, it fell off.
Yeah,
you got to strap it on, man. You got to run a bungee cord around the doors.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, we're taking it. And then, of course, I remember the one when they were doing the whole thing. This was a decade ago when the shipping container full of ducks had washed off and broke up and were showing up. And one artist made a huge yellow duck and floated it on like the through the Bronx on the river, or something like that.
That's funny.
In the Hudson. And I mean, it was like 12 feet, in each direction. But now, if somebody laughs and smiles, what's the hurt?
Yeah,
I get it. It may not be for you. It may not be something you want to do. And if you get one and don't want it, don't throw it away. Just put it on the next Jeep door handle.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt anything.
Exactly.
But again, that's every Jeep's unique. Every Jeeper's unique. And do what makes you happy.
As I say, you do you, boo, as the kids would say. They don't say that anymore, but that offer not valid in Florida.
Florida.
Oh, okay. So, do you want to tippy tire into the garage real quick?
Sure, let's go on out there.
All righty.
Hey, guys. Scott.
What?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm getting too predictable. I'm going to have to hit him with a shot collar now.
Oh, Lord, help me. Anyway, folks, I mentioned earlier about the Suncoast Drive Shaft YJ project that I've been helping them with, and a great bunch of guys at that shop and lady, singular, and Mel. I can't forget you. You kind of make it sparkle. And we're kind of putting together this really neat old 90s YJ. For those that haven't listened to the previous shows, shame on you. Go listen. And it started out. Go ahead. Scott wants to chime in.
No. Go ahead and check him out. We'll wait. Welcome back.
Yeah. He's been listening to old radio again, hasn't he? So anyway, you guys may remember I left it that we had most things working except one kind of important instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, the speedo. The Holley speedometer was refusing to listen to anything that I could figure out, and make work.
Did you try using a squirrel?
Pretty close to it.
Okay.
Pretty close to it. I ended up doing a little home electronics, and this is about as geeky as it's going to get, folks, because I made a square wave generator because I talked to the guys at Holley and I read the manuals again, and it was, well, you need a square wave. And I said, okay, I get it. You need a square wave signal. I thought he would ask. And
what's a square wave? Sorry. I was looking at the time code going, wait, I should take a picture and make sure I do the sound effects.
No, you'll find it. But yeah, it'll get you in the right ballpark. So anyway, folks, what we're talking about here is when you have a signal coming from what is commonly referred to as a pulse generator. Those of you in the tech world know what I'm talking about. Things like your wheel speed sensor for your ABS brakes, your speedometer, if you don't have a GPS-based one, anything that is rotating and you're trying to monitor how fast it's rotating, your camshaft, your crank position sensor, all of those are pulse signals.
Right.
They're little electronic chippy things and little selector wheels that swing by, and it makes the thing go bip, 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 or brrr, as the case may be.
like ping pong.
And Lovely Electronics love to count pulses. And they got clocks in them, and they go, okay, that was so many, like your doctor, how many beats per minute, your heart rate's a little high again, Mr. Powell. You need to cut down. Yes, sir.
No, mine just goes, check again, sir. Are you sure you're still breathing?
Yes. So anyway, the problem is it's very good to read square waves. And the best way to think of a square wave on an electrical wire is you standing at the light switch going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Okay?
Yeah. No.
That's pretty square. It goes off, straight up to 120 volts, then down to 0, and then up. And if you look really, really close with a really good oscilloscope, you'll see that the line isn't straight up and down. It's close, but it's not. There's a time that it takes for the electricity to actually flow up to 120 volts. All right. And over that time, so the upstroke and downstrokes lean a little, okay? That's called the leading edge and the trailing edge of the pulse. Well, computers like really straight up and down lines. It makes it really easy to count very cleanly,
They like it crisp.
They like it crisp. But in the early days, we didn't have really good ways to do crisp.
Yeah.
Mechanical switches and early Hall effect switches, which is a magnetic indicator and all that stuff, put out really sloppy, almost sine waves, which is like if you take a string and tie it to a pole and walk back and then leave it a little slack and start whipping it up and down, you can make that neat little shape, a waveform like a guitar string makes, if you ever seen it, or the pictures of sound waves or these little curvy things. Those are really hard for computers to pick out because when is it actually at 12 volts and for how long?
Right.
Okay. It's usually at 12 volts for an instant, like a microsecond or a picosecond or something, because it's got a long curving ramp up and a long curving ramp down. It's great for generating electricity because that's the way it comes out of the generator is in a sine wave. But it's really kind of not as easy to count.
Yeah.
Particularly in a car that's trying to count a bunch of things at the same time and decide on how much fuel goes in and when the spark goes off and all that kind of stuff. So we started off with the early vehicles trying to pay attention to sine waves, and then they got over to what are called triangular waves or sawtooth waves and all different waveforms, trying to get something that was easy, particularly in the older computers that weren't as efficient at monitoring that change. And it has a lot to do with clock speed and resistance and wire, all kinds of stuff my brother, who's an electronics engineer, can all talk about all day. And I go and kind of glaze over because I get it. I just want the thing to run.
Yeah.
But, so the thing is that the Jeep's speed transducer is an earlier Hall effect switch, which is a fancy thing. It's a chip. A guy named Hall, gee, imagine that, figured out that there was certain semiconductors that would react to magnetic media, and it rather like a transistor. A transistor has 3 wires, and you have a high current in, an out, and a trigger. And if you put a waveform in on the trigger, you'll get an output that's the exact copy of the input, but at a higher voltage. Okay. And that's what you used to see all the step-up transistors. Now, when we have computers, they're all put on one chip, or you get the big power transistors. For those of you audiophiles out there, know that you've got those big monster transistors that are the cans on the back of the stereo with the cooling fins. And those are the really big power ones, taking the bumped up, signal and jumping it up. Where I'm going with that is if you replace a signal with the ability to sense a magnetic field, and then you put a spinning magnet out there, or in the later cases, you don't need it to be a magnet. It can be a piece of steel because the switch has its magnet in it, and the steel comes by, and it can create a pulse as each one comes by. And the early ones had reluctor wheels, that look like gear teeth. Problem was they didn't create a really great square wave. They created kind of a mushroom top.
Or you call them a shark fin wave or something.
Yeah, shark fin wave, because you had a little bit longer ramp up time and then a quicker drop. So they kind of, the waveform kind of looked like which you draw a classic shark fin, above the water, going from 0 up to 12 or 5 or 8 or whatever it was. Jeeps used all 3 voltages at one time or another. And so told you this was geeky. But nowadays that Holly Dash wants what they call a GM compatible square wave.
Right.
And GM is one of the big pushers in automobile electronics, setting standards.
Yeah, Delphi and all that.
Delphi.
What if they're even in business? Holy cow.
Yeah.
Showing my age.
But the thing is that the Jeep's speed sensor that goes down on the transfer case for those that didn't have a cable drive just doesn't produce a clean enough signal for the Holly to read.
Right.
Which is like how do I get there from here? So the next thing is I start digging around is there an alternate sender unit? And yes, there's a couple of companies out there who make replacement senders. Can't think of the name of the gauge company that does it. One of the big
BDO?
No, it wasn't BDO, but it's
Summit?
American or somebody.
American Racing?
It may have been an American Racing gauge, something like that. And they make one, and I checked, and yes, it would produce a GM-compatible square wave. And then I asked the next question, knowing how Jeeps get used. How watertight is it? First off, it's an inline sensor, so you unscrewed a cable-driven speedometer, screw this in with a short stub shaft, and then screw the cable back in on top of it. And then you have both out, but you can put a cap on the output. You don't have to have a cable out. And I called them up and said, hey, so does this, put out a good clean square wave? Yes, it does. With the Holly Dash. Yes, we've tried it with a Holly Dash. It works very well. I said, great. How waterproof is it? Oh, it's perfectly waterproof. It's suitable for a car, and I said, well, it looks like it's kind of a metallic case. And from what I'm seeing, is it welded or sealed? It looks crimped. He goes, well, no, it's not watertight. I said, oh, great. So it's not submersible. And he said,
what are you driving, a boat?
Pretty much. And I said, no, I'm driving a Jeep. And I happen to know, he says, well, is that going to get submerged?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, mine's been probably 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah, we have great video of the JK going underwater.
Yes. So I said, thanks. I'll let you know. Otherwise, I said, can I seal the ports up? And he said, not recommended because, it gets hot and air has something to go somewhere. So we started digging around. And I said, well, as crude as they are, the units for the Jeeps, and there's 2 versions of them, the sensor unit that bolts to the transfer case. The early ones were just a male end on the sensor and a female on the plug that comes in the wiring harness, and they reversed those in 03, I think, but it's still the same sensor. But they are hermetically sealed in their case. The case bolts to the little mounting bracket with an O-ring, and then the mounting bracket that you clock, depending on your gear ratio, is O-ringed to the transfer case.
Yeah.
They're very watertight. They function well. Mine's been dunked 2 or 3 times a year for the last 7 years, and it's still behaving itself. So I was pretty much left with we really should keep it Jeep below the belly. And before those of you who know your parts start sending me angry emails, yes, I am well aware that the 90 YJ was a cable-driven system. But this one had been swapped already to a slip yoke eliminator kit. And the base plate for the cable and the base plate for the sensor fit in the same hole. And the difference is the cable one uses the long shaft speedo gears, and the sensor one uses the short shaft. So when you go in and look at the charts for the gear teeth, there's a long shaft and a short shaft. So they both bolt up the same way. So, no harm, no foul. So I start digging around. You may recall that we did a LS swap in the last year in a 95 YJ, and we did all the wiring on that. Well, that was a opposite case. I had modern drivetrain, and I wanted it to report to old Jeep. But it made me think, we had a little adapter module, and it wasn't for the speedo, it was for the tachometer, but that came from Dakota Digital.
Right.
there's got to be something to Dakota Digital. I mean, they're smart folks. They like to do things like this, waveforms and speedos and multipliers and dividers and adders, subtractors. So I gave them a call. And folks, we've told you before, if you got your question well in your mind, you can call them and they can work wonders for you. And then the guy, I ended up with a young man. Fortunately, I didn't get his name, but he was very nice. And he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "This is my problem. I've got a crappy signal. It is a pulse rate. It's somewhere between a sine wave and a sawtooth wave. And I need a clean square wave out."
Yes.
And I said, "I'm trying to drive a Holley glass dash. I don't want to use an unsealed adapter. That's why I'm trying to use the sealed Jeep one." And I said, "What you got?" And he started talking. We talked for probably a good 10 minutes. And he says, I think you should probably look at the SGI, which is signal for them, dash 100 BT. And I said, "So I'm familiar with the unit." And I told him, I said, "We just had done a swap, but it was the other direction." He goes,
Right.
"This doesn't care."
Sweet.
I said, "So it will clean up." He says, "Yeah, the input section of the 100 BT is pretty broadband.
Right.
Since I'm not trying to count, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just trying to say on, off. And we've got settings, and you can do H to L, L to H, which is low impedance to high impedance, or low noise, weak signal to high. All these other kind of, they describe it very well in there." And he said, "I can tell you that the output for the 100 BT is a clean GM compatible square wave." I'm like, bingo.
Yay.
Let's try one. And I'm like, "How much is this going to be?" It was $99 and you buy it through Amazon.
Nice.
I'm like, "Really?" And found out later, he says, "So what do you, when we talked a little deeper about it," and he says, I said, "Well, I'm going to have to go find some 12 volt. I said, "Normally these sensors are 8 volt early and 5 volt later." He says, "Well, then why don't you just power it from the box?" I'm like, "What?" He says, "You see the one that says SIG plus and SIG minus?" I said, "Yeah." I said, the instructions aren't real clear on what those are for." He says, "Well, that's because that's the sensor signal power and signal ground. And then you can go into, there's like 4 screws depending on what your signal is and what condition it's in." He said, "I'd suggest you try, I think it was port 4 or something like that. And then you can adjust the calibration if you need to add, subtract, multiply, divide. I said, I can do that in the dash too." He goes, "Yeah, no, I'm familiar with the Holley. We're making our own versions, sooner or later, and we're going to go square wave too. So yeah, I know that this will produce a square wave." So we went ahead and got it. And before that, let me back up when I talk about geeky. I sat down on a breadboard. You guys, that has nothing to do with Wonder White or Wheat. That is a small electronics board that you can push in resistors and all these other components as you see fit and do quick wiring. And I made a square wave generator.
Right.
And after making one that finally worked, I was like, you know what? I went on to Amazon and ordered for $6 a pack of 5 from China.
Right.
They were very simple, but they put out a clean square wave.
Right.
And they're for prototyping and testing. And I said, you know what? This comes up enough times that I'm going to do that. So I took the square wave generator out, which is on a massive chip that's 3/4 of an inch by 1/2 inch. Little tiny sucker. Uses watch screwdrivers to adjust the potentiometer so you can set it.
Right.
Hooked it up to the Holley, and I said, I just want to make bloody sure that the Holley dash and the wiring to it works. Plugged the thing in, turned it on, and lo and behold, the speedometer went, boing! Oh, we're doing 30 miles an hour. So if I adjust this one here, 40, 50, 60, okay. Dash is good. Dash is good. That's when I was like, okay, Shane, go ahead. Let's get the 100 BT. We set that thing up, sitting right there in the floor of the Jeep. I hadn't even pushed wires out to underneath. This is the sensor wire. I'm going to get 12 volts. I'd left that ignition key wire here. Let me make a little wire up, put it under the ground screw. And there's wire 1 from the sensor. There's the sensor out wire. And there's the ground to the sensor. Reach down, kind of gave a quick Hail Mary, spun the gear with my finger, and the speedometer needle goes whoop, boom.
Nice.
I was like, oh, thank heavens. Not saying it's right.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's probably pretty dang close because we're going to regear anyway. And I can adjust the input output speed calibration in the SIG 100 BT, or I can do it in the Holly Dash. It has a neat function that it's written out as X, which is your input,
Right.
plus Y times Z is what it'll read. And what that means is if you need the entire range to be just adjusted a fixed digit, in other words, if I start rolling, let's just say I need 5 to be 10 and 10 to be 15 and 25 to be 30. In other words, they fixed amount more.
Right.
Regardless of how fast I'm going, I use the plus, the Y. So it's X plus 5, and it will add 5 into the whole sweep. If you don't need that, if you need, I'm 10% slow, which is usually like a tire change, okay? And it usually isn't 10%, but just using 10.
Yeah, round number.
Which means at 5, okay, it's adding a half a mile an hour. At 10 or at 50, I'm adding, 10% of that is 5 miles an hour. So, in other words, I need to add 10%. You do the end one, and you do 1.1. So that's times 1.1. So if you have 5, it'll do 1.1 times 5, which is 5.5. Or at 10, it's 10 point, whatever. It does all the math for you. So it's a really neat dash. It can calibrate everything. But the thing was to get the two pieces to talk. And this wasn't a case of did it have power or ground. This is one of the ones that's a little deeper that you bang your head a few times. And it was something called waveform. And for those of you who want to get into Jeep electrical, I'm going to tell you right now that waveform matters more than you'd ever believe. Right. Particularly when you're playing mix-up between generations of computer systems. The 90 YJ was the early intro into the computer age. Yes, it had a carburetor, but it had a little piggyback computer to help monitor the carburetor. Right. Yes, it had, it didn't have points. It had a very early, Hall effect ignition on the distributor, and the big Chrysler gray box, if you remember those square boxes with fins on them. But it still used a coil with a ballast resistor, and all that had been ripped out, and we were recreating, but in modern, so we used a multi-spark ignition, an MSD ignition box with a MSD coil pack, and driving that correctly. The carburetor got left alone because they'd converted it over to a straight Holley 2-barrel, which works admirably well. It doesn't even have an electric choke on it. So, there's no wires there. But the thing is that now I'm taking a 1990s technology engine, drivetrain, but I'm reporting it to a 2021 digital dash system.
Almost the exact opposite we did last.
It is. It's exact opposite of the last one, which was taking a 2008 modern LS drivetrain, computer-driven everything. Yep. And taking my data out from that computer and driving an almost analog mechanical dash. It was a semi-digital dash. Right. The speedometer was actually a digital counter itself, but all the other hard points were mechanicals. And so, trying to marry technologies, if you're going to go that route, what I'm sharing with you is it can be done. Yeah. It's very possible. It takes thinking outside the box. It takes understanding what you're trying to do in base terms. In my case, I was taking a ragged electrical pulse, but I needed a clean pulse to drive the dash. I had to find something in some way to take the low resolution and turn it to high resolution. Fortunately, there's a bunch of companies out there that make a bunch of products. Not a sponsor, but I will say that Dakota Digital really seems to have their act together. Mm-hmm. I've used them about 4 or 5 times on different projects, and their tech staff understands when you are willing to talk to them coherently about a problem. Now, if you go, I got this sensor and I'm trying to get to that dash, they're going to go, well, what's the problem? They're not in the world of knowing Jeep parts. They work on any vehicle out there. Mm-hmm. So you have to be the one to go, well, this is what I come out with, and this is what I'm trying to go in with. And then you're in their language, and they're like, we got that, or we got this. It's a lot of fun. I hope that we can get the YJ up to Crawling for the Fallen. I think it'd be fun for people who have heard about it on the show, would like to come see it. It in itself may not look that special, other than when you go over to the driver's side and throw a certain toggle switch, and all of a sudden this blank, it almost looks like an iPod where the center gauge would be on a CJ. Yeah. And all of a sudden, and all of a sudden there's a 6 gauge with indicator lights and turn signal. Everything comes up, and it's like, ooh, that's pretty wicked.
The PlayStation generation would be proud.
Yes.
But going back to what you said about contacting them and saying, I got slot A into slot B. It is a litmus test about understanding the process and understanding what good questions to ask.
Yes.
When we talk about bench building and stuff like that, where, it takes research. And we talk about, doing your research and doing all these things. If you do that, one, it tremendously helps the people because, again, you're talking with them. You're talking in their language so they understand.
Right. They can help you better.
And the more information you give them, the better information you'll get.
Right. And, I mean, one of my next purchases is a tool. It's not a cheap tool, and I wouldn't advise it for the average Joe. But if you're into doing this level of integration and creation, is called a picoscope. Right. And what a picoscope is an oscilloscope driver. And I probably used, and I'll come back to what an oscilloscope is, so don't panic, that interfaces with a laptop. So that you're not carrying a big old CRT, cathode ray tube, glass TV screen out. And it's what you've seen in every science fiction thriller movie, particularly the old ones in the 50s, that little round scope that has the crosshair lines on it, and you see the little blue-white lane going across the screen. You know what I'm talking about, Scott?
No, because when you went to the 1950s, I thought the 2 movies exactly came to mind. Number one, Young Frankenstein.
And there was an oscilloscope in the background of Gene Wilder.
And the other one was Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I don't think there was an oscilloscope in that.
There probably was, but it probably wasn't where you could see it.
But I remember that they did turn up the power transducer 3 more triangles.
So anyway, what it does is it lets you see the waveform of the electricity on the wire.
Yeah.
And if you look at any of the YouTube channels out there, watch Wes work, SMA, South Main Auto is big one on that.
Is that the judo chop guy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. These guys, they try to pass themselves off as, everyday mechanics that, I'm not that good, or if I can do it, you can do it. If you watch their shows on the electrical, these guys are geniuses. Shout out to both of them.
I remember when the one guy had he took a turn signal dual filament bulb. He was diagnosing a problem, and he goes, see, this way it would work, but if you do it and jiggle this around this way, then the lower side came on. And see, now we got a problem here. And I'm like, dude, that's genius.
Yeah. And so these guys are, that's Eric O. Up at South Main and up in Avenida, New York. I probably pronounced that wrong. And then Wes is in Illinois, ways outside of Chicago. And Wes, I'm sorry, you've blown your cover. I mean, you try to paint yourself as a backyard mechanic. You are nothing like a backyard mechanic. You are a gifted man. Again, not a sponsor, but I'm impressed with
credit where's credit.
Credit where credit's due. These guys diagnose. They very rarely, as the term goes, shoots the parts cannon. Which is an avid way of saying, I'm going to guess it's that. Let's change it and see if it fixes the problem.
Parts changer.
They will get down to the point of, okay, this part, that part, I should be able to see this happen if I do that, and it doesn't. And they get to the point of looking at waveforms. Eric is really good at looking at ignition and going, well, you see that raise right there? That's the building of current for the opening of the injectors. I understand what he's talking about, and I'm looking at it going, okay, dude, with my eyes and your camera, I don't see it.
Yeah.
But I get the point. I want to get a picoscope and start learning, because you guys in a lot of the Jeep world keep asking me tougher questions, and the newer Jeeps get tougher and tougher and tougher because let's face it, they're almost all digital now.
Yeah.
And, well, I can tell you if the plug is firing, but is it firing at the right time? Is it firing with the right intensity? Is the injector opening? Is it opening correctly? And the picoscope's not cheap, but it does allow you to put multiple traces on a screen and look at waveforms so you can compare A to B, right to left,
in real time.
And look at what's happening. And very quickly you can say, yes, I have a signal going into an injector. No, I don't have a signal coming out on the ground line telling me that it's doing anything, kind of a thing. So anyhow, that's just future plans for my garage is I'm going to make the next step, into the deeper tech. For those of you out there that like this stuff, let us know if you like me going this deep. It is kind of, as I say, part and parcel of what I seem to enjoy doing, and more is taking the bizarre requests of, hey, can I do this to this? And everybody says I can't. Oh boy, you just raised the challenge flag. So we'll go on with that. Now, anything else you have? So,
not really that I can think of off the top of my
because
head.
I'm sitting here going, I think we've been on for a while.
Yeah, this has pretty much been a good sized show. And again, we thank you for everything. Again, check out all the Facebook, social media. If you have a question, on the trail podcast at gmail.com. Facebook Messenger works as always. And the 4x4 Radio Network, you can check everyone out.
Check one out. And again, if you're anywhere in the neighborhood, check out Crawling for the Fallen. Chrissy is just absolutely fantastic at setting these things up and organizing it. And if you're out there, drop by and say hi. We'd like to meet you.
Yeah, come on by and just say hey and spend some time for a really good event.
All righty. Well, I think, as we always say, I think we've run out of time. And we've talked enough. Time to lock hubs, put the Jeep in 4-low, and hit the trail.
And thanks for spending time with us. And as always, wheel legal.
Tread lightly.
And remember, take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the trail.
We want to make sure it's there for the following generations to enjoy as we enjoy it. Not for, you know what? I'm sorry, just to segue. Four-wheeling in a trash dump just doesn't sound inviting.
When you said that, someone shared something that I had to byline real quickly. It was a great Jeep name, Trash Panda.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That was kind of cool.
Well, you know what that's a moniker for.
Yeah, it's a raccoon.
Raccoon, yeah. And but there's a Jeep out here that has that tramp stamp on the hood.
Nice.
Trash Panda. Guess what color it is?
Silver.
No, it's white with white. It's black with white accents.
Nice.
So anyway,
all right.
Be sure to check in the next 2 weeks for the next podcast of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. Listen to new weird stuff, strange things people are asking me to do in the garage, and who knows, we may have something to report on.
I had to hit a button.
Yeah.
Later, guys.
Later. Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.